She paid for a stranger's coffee, then saw him fire her boss the next morning. The rain was falling so hard that evening that it seemed as if the entire city had disappeared behind a curtain of water. People rushed past each other with their heads down, trying to escape the cold. Inside a small downtown coffee shop, a young waitress named Emma stood near the counter, exhausted after another long shift. She had no idea that one small act of kindness she was about to make would completely change her life before the next sunrise. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional and inspiring stories to people around the world. Emma was 26 years old and carried more burdens than most people knew. Every morning she woke up before sunrise and every night she returned home long after dark. She worked at a busy cafe owned by a large restaurant company. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and the medical bills left behind after her mother's illness. Most customers only saw a smiling waitress carrying coffee cups and taking orders. They never saw the anxiety she carried inside. They never saw the unpaid bills hidden in a drawer at home. They never saw the tears she sometimes cried when she sat alone in her tiny apartment. The hardest part of her job was not the long hours. It was her manager. Mr. Collins had a reputation for making everyone miserable. He criticized employees in front of customers, blamed workers for problems they didn't cause, and constantly threatened to cut shifts whenever someone made the smallest mistake. Emma endured it because she needed the job. Many employees had already quit. She stayed because she had no other choice. That rainy evening had been particularly difficult. Several workers had called in sick, forcing Emma to handle most of the tables herself. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. Her head hurt. As closing time approached, she noticed a man standing near the entrance. His clothes were soaked. His hair was wet from the rain. He looked exhausted. The strange thing was that he didn't seem homeless, but he also didn't look like someone who belonged among the wealthy business people who usually visited the cafe. He simply looked tired. Deeply tired. The man approached the counter and checked his pockets. Then he checked them again. Emma watched his expression change. Embarrassment. Disappointment. Frustration. He quietly spoke to the cashier, then stepped away. A few moments later Emma learned what had happened. The man had forgotten his wallet. After a long day, it would have been easy to ignore him. Most people probably would have. But Emma saw something in his eyes. Loneliness. The kind of loneliness she knew all too well. Without thinking too much about it, she walked to the counter and paid for his coffee herself. It wasn't a large amount. But for someone struggling financially, even a few dollars mattered. The stranger looked surprised. His eyes widened. For a moment, it seemed as if he wanted to say something important. Instead, he simply thanked her with genuine gratitude. Emma smiled and returned to work. She never asked for his name. She never expected anything in return. To her, it was just a small act of kindness. Nothing more. Or so she thought. That night Emma returned home exhausted. The rain continued outside her apartment window. She ate a simple dinner, reviewed her bills, and tried not to panic about the numbers. The math never worked. Every month she somehow survived, but she never seemed to get ahead. She eventually fell asleep wondering how much longer she could keep living like this. The next morning began like every other morning. She arrived early. Prepared tables. Cleaned counters. Checked inventory. And mentally prepared herself for another difficult day with Mr. Collins. But something felt different. Several expensive cars were parked outside. Employees whispered nervously. Corporate executives had arrived unexpectedly. Visits from corporate headquarters were rare. And they usually meant trouble. Mr. Collins was unusually nervous. His confident attitude had disappeared. He kept adjusting his tie and checking his phone. Then the front door opened. The entire cafe suddenly became silent. Emma looked toward the entrance. And her heart nearly stopped. Walking through the door was the same man whose coffee she had paid for the night before. The soaked stranger. The tired man. The lonely customer. Except he looked completely different now. His suit was flawless. His posture was confident. And every executive in the building immediately stood up when he entered. Confused, Emma watched as people greeted him with obvious respect. Then she heard someone whisper his name. Daniel Harper. The CEO. Not just the CEO of the cafe. The CEO of the entire company. Hundreds of restaurants. Thousands of employees. Millions in annual revenue. The stranger whose coffee she had purchased was the owner of everything. Emma could hardly believe it. The man glanced across the room. Their eyes met. Recognition appeared instantly on his face. He smiled. A real smile. Not the fake corporate kind. The smile of someone who remembered kindness. What happened next shocked everyone. Daniel requested a private meeting with management. The meeting lasted less than an hour. When the office door finally opened, Mr. Collins emerged carrying a box of personal belongings. His face was pale. Employees stared in disbelief. No one said a word. A few minutes later, corporate representatives informed the staff that Mr. Collins was no longer employed by the company. Years of complaints had finally caught up with him. Daniel had been conducting secret inspections across multiple locations, personally observing operations without revealing his identity. The previous evening had been part of that process. He had watched employees, observed customers, evaluated management. And during that visit, he had experienced both the worst and best parts of the company. The worst was seeing how management had created a toxic environment. The best was seeing a struggling waitress spend her own money to help a stranger. Emma never imagined her simple act would have such consequences. But the story was only beginning. Over the next few weeks, major changes swept through the cafe. Employee concerns were finally taken seriously. Schedules became fairer. Working conditions improved. Morale slowly returned. For the first time in years, people looked forward to coming to work. Meanwhile, Daniel continued visiting locations personally. Unlike many executives, he genuinely cared about understanding what employees experienced every day. One afternoon, Emma received an unexpected invitation to meet with him. She felt terrified. Had she done something wrong? Was she in trouble? When she entered the conference room, Daniel greeted her warmly. He thanked her again for the coffee. But what touched Emma most was not his gratitude. It was what he told her next. He explained that during the previous year, his life had fallen apart. His marriage had ended. Several trusted business partners had betrayed him. Despite his wealth and success, he had become increasingly isolated. The rainy evening when he entered the cafe had been one of the lowest moments of his life. No one recognized him. No one knew who he was. And strangely, he preferred it that way. For one night, he wanted to be treated like an ordinary person. What affected him deeply was that Emma had shown kindness when she believed he had absolutely nothing to offer her. Not because of power. Not because of money. Not because of status. Simply because he appeared to need help. Daniel admitted that her small act had restored some of his faith in people. For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She had never imagined that buying someone a cup of coffee could have such meaning. The meeting ended. Life continued. But opportunities slowly began appearing. Daniel encouraged managers to identify employees with leadership potential. Emma's name repeatedly surfaced. Coworkers respected her. Customers loved her. She solved problems calmly. And despite difficult circumstances, she consistently helped others. Several months later she was offered training for a supervisory role. The promotion came with better pay, better hours, and greater responsibility. For the first time in years, she could breathe financially. The extra income helped her pay off old debts. She moved into a safer apartment. She even started building a small savings account. Things many people take for granted felt like miracles to her. Yet the greatest change wasn't financial. It was emotional. For so long, Emma had viewed herself as invisible. Someone who worked hard but was never noticed. Someone who gave endlessly while receiving very little in return. Now she realized something important. Kindness matters. Even when nobody sees it. Even when nobody applauds it. Even when there is no reward. Months turned into a year. Emma continued growing professionally. She completed management training. Learned new skills. Mentored younger employees. And became known throughout the company for her compassion and leadership. Meanwhile, Daniel transformed company culture. He created anonymous reporting systems. Expanded employee benefits. Improved training programs. And increased support for workers facing financial hardship. He often remembered the rainy evening when a waitress had reminded him what genuine humanity looked like. One winter afternoon, nearly 2 years after their first meeting, Emma received another surprise invitation. This time she was asked to attend the company's annual leadership conference. Hundreds of managers and executives filled a large ballroom. Emma felt completely out of place. Then Daniel stepped onto the stage. He delivered a speech about leadership. About service. About character. And near the end, he shared a story. A story about a young waitress who bought coffee for a stranger during a storm. He never mentioned her name initially. Yet many people in the room began realizing who he was talking about. The audience listened in silence. Some wiped away tears. Daniel explained that companies are not built by buildings, brands, or profits. They are built by people. And sometimes the smallest actions reveal the greatest character. Then he invited Emma onto the stage. The room erupted with applause. She stood there overwhelmed. Not because she enjoyed attention. But because she remembered where she had started. The frightened waitress struggling to survive. The woman who cried over unpaid bills. The employee who felt invisible. Looking across the audience, she realized how much her life had changed. Not through luck. Not through shortcuts. But through perseverance, integrity, and kindness. As the applause continued, Emma thought about her mother. The woman who had taught her to help people whenever possible. Even when life was difficult. Even when she had little to give. Especially then. Years later, Emma became one of the company's most respected regional leaders. Thousands of employees worked under her guidance. Whenever she visited a location, she made time to speak with staff personally. She remembered names. Listened to concerns. Offered encouragement. Because she never forgot what it felt like to struggle. She never forgot the pain of feeling unseen. And she never forgot the rainy evening that changed everything. One simple coffee. One simple decision. One simple act of kindness. The world often tells us that success comes from power, money, or influence. But sometimes the greatest changes begin with something much smaller. A helping hand. A caring gesture. A moment of compassion. A cup of coffee shared with a stranger. And the beautiful truth is that we never know how far our kindness may travel. We never know whose life we might touch. Or how that kindness might eventually return in ways we never imagined. Before this story ends, leave a comment below and tell us, What is the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps more people discover stories that inspire hope, compassion, and second chances. And before you go, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? We'd love to know how many countries around the world are joining us today. Remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. Red Heart.